When I made my last video last week, underrated albums, I think number 6, episode 6 of the underrated album series, I talked about the of Montreal album Hissing Fauna, You the Destroyer, and I even went so far to proclaim this my favorite album of that decade. It was released in 2007. But after the video, I thought about what other albums from that period I liked, and another one of my favorite albums of that decade is also from 2007. So in retrospect, I never really thought about it before, but it seems 2007 was a year where much music came out that I was really into, and the other album, my second favorite album of 2007, next to the Of Montreal album, that other album from 2007 that I thought about after making the Of Montreal video, I thought to myself, oh, this could also be considered underrated. My second favorite album of 2007, next to the Of Montreal, and maybe even more underrated, because the Of Montreal album, as I said in that video, it even charted in the Billboard charts, and it was like, in many lists of best albums of the year. I don't think it was album of the year in any list, but it was always there somewhere, like, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th favorite album. But the album I'm talking about today was also an album critics loved, but not that much, and I think it was forgotten quicker than the Of Montreal album, which maybe has also something to do with the fact that Of Montreal are still a band that's out there and still releasing stuff every now and then. But this album, this band, Voxtrot, they split up after that album. Not immediately after the album was released, but they released like 2 or 3 more EPs or single tracks, and then around 2010, I think, they split up. And the mastermind, the singer guitar player Ramesh Srivatava, sorry, I hope I didn't butcher the name, Ramesh Srivatava, he has an Indian father and an American mother. He released a solo album in 2014. I don't think he released anything since then. So that's why I think that Foxtrot, the band we're talking about today, might be a bit forgotten, and that's sad, because they were, although they did only do this one album. This one album to me is a masterpiece, and they also released excellent singles before and after that album with tracks that aren't on the album. So if you add it all up, they would have enough material for 2 great albums. But today we're not talking about the EPs. This is one of those EPs. I'm your biggest fan. I think that was the last EP before the album was released, so I think this must be from 2006. Can't find it there, but I think this is from 2000. Yeah, it's from 2006. The biggest fan. Not their best EP. I think their best EP is probably Raised by Wolves. And today we're going to talk about their debut album, and unfortunately their only album, just called Foxtrot. As I said, my second favorite album of 2007, next to the Of Montreal Hissing Fauna album. And as I said, it got good reviews. It's not like no one knows about it, and it's very obscure. At that time, for a short while, this was kind of a hip band, and this was an album people talked about. But, since then, the band is kind of forgotten, I think. It's a fantastic album. I think it's probably one of my 5 favorite albums from the decade. And, who are Foxtrot, first of all? What do they sound like? I think if you're a fan of bands like, the thing is, if you're a fan of bands like Bell and Sebastian or Camera Obscura, this twee pop, I don't have to tell you about them, because when you're a fan of those groups, you probably know Foxtrot. But also if you're into power pop, mid-70s, late 70s power pop, and 80s, early 80s new wave, kind of post-punk and things like that, you may enjoy this record, but it's more than just a power pop or post-punk or a twee pop album. It's it has some sort of influences of that, but it's its own thing. I think it's much grander. It's great songs, great songwriting, great arrangements. If you're a Beatle fan, this channel, most of the videos on this channel are Beatle related. I would say if you're a Beatle fan and you're not into indie music, you don't know this band or some of the other more recent bands I'm talking about often, this is a band, as a Beatle fan, you will really enjoy. The individual songs, it starts off with Introduction, which is kind of a symphonic song that builds and builds, that kind of soaks you into the album. Kid Gloves, the second song, was, I wouldn't say a hit because they didn't really have hits, but it was in the indie clubs. It was a song, and I'm not sure if you called it playlists back then, but there were those kind of playlists that you could download. There wasn't really streaming in 2007, and Kid Gloves was one of those 3 or 4 Foxtrot songs that was very prominent, but it's by far not my favorite song on that album. It's more like the hidden gems on that album that really make that album great. Songs like Every Day, which is again more like a almost symphonic kind of big anthem with strings and things like that. Another one that I really like is Brothers in Conflict. And the last song, I think my favorite song is the last song, Blood Red Blood, which is also really an anthem kind of song. And there's a song called Stephen, which is like Beatles, Revolver era Beatles, or maybe even Kings, mid-60s, Sunny Afternoon kind of Kings, real great songwriting. It's a wonderful record. I think more people should know about this album. Foxtrot, one of the most underrated albums of its decade.